Yes. Okay, closing off today's stage is Steve Gale talking and showcasing how to use Umbraco Cloud and Starter Kit to speed up the time to market. So please give a big applause, and Steve, take it away.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to my talk. This one's a little bit different, actually, because so far, to rest assured, I'm not going to build a website on stage for you right now. There's no live demos. I'm not going to try and compile anything. Actually, the point of this is that through the stuff that we've been doing, the things we're going to talk about, is that's actually what you don't need to do. So it's quite the opposite, I suppose. I'm actually here to talk a little bit more about our work with Umbraco Cloud and the Starter Kit product, and how actually it's a little bit like the wolf in sheep's clothing. So we've got a quick agenda, which we'll talk through some points. It's not going to be very long, obviously. But I'm Steve. I'm from CTI Group, and we build websites and do lots of digital marketing and other things too. And actually, as I said, the thing that we're here to talk about today is using Umbraco Cloud and Starter Kit, and actually the power and the benefit of doing that, in particularly how it's aimed more towards marketeers and commercial teams rather than actually developers, which is slightly interesting for a development conference. Before I go any further, just a quick show of hands in the room. At this point, there's a whole lot of panic. Everybody's thinking, oh, I didn't know we were going to have to do something in this talk. So, quick show of hands. Who in the room is more from a marketing or a commercial team background? Excellent. We've got lots of shows of hands. Who from in the room is from a development background? And we've got a few of those as well. You're either going to be really, really interested in this bit or really, really turned off. We'll find out which in a few minutes. So for the marketeers and the commercial people in the room, part of what we're going to talk about now is actually how you don't need developers once we've spun things up, and how easy it is for you to look after your site yourselves. So I'm going to start by talking, oddly, a little bit about ourselves, okay? And there's a reason why I'm doing this. It's not because I want to talk to you about how big, bad, or clever we are. It's actually to try and put a sense of scale on this. So we've been working with Umbraco for an awfully long time, and we've built lots of large sites, multi-site setups with multiple languages and such. But actually, the question becomes here, why did we pick Umbraco Cloud and why did we use Starter Kit if that's not the sort of thing we normally do? So before I answer that question, I'm going to start with busting a few myths, okay? Let's talk about what not hardcore, spent that much time listening to hardcore today. It's odd to be talking about Umbraco Cloud. Let's talk about what it isn't, okay? It isn't just for small or simple sites. It's one of those things that people look at and go, it's just, it's a bit like WordPress, and that's not for me, that's not what I need. One of the things that definitely, some people will look at it and think that it isn't for larger companies. Well, we're quite a large company by some standards, but we use it, and we use it quite a lot because it's really useful. Some people would argue that it's got limited capability or limited functionality. Well, no, because it's built on the power of Umbraco, and we all know how big and powerful that is. It can't be integrated to external sources because it's just designed for little small sites that don't do anything. No, again, we're going to talk a little bit more about why you can extend it out even with modules that don't exist. Lastly, it's a fixed theme, it's a fixed layout, it's just designed to do a small job, and that's it. So why did we pick it? Okay, why did we use that over something like sort of classic Umbraco or even Umbraco Hardcore? Well, actually, our client wanted very, very quick deadline, a very quick delivery for a very tight deadline for a campaign site, okay? There was an incumbent in there that we're already working with a headless CMS that wasn't hardcore, but we won't hold that against them. And they were building this monolithic system. They just didn't have the ability or the the speed to be able to turn it around in such a short space of time. And again, looking at all the marketing people in the room, you don't want to wait all that time. You just need something that does the job, is quick, is simple. I want to market a campaign off the back of it. I don't want to have to wait months on end for a project to get built, okay? So it needed to support their paid media in their social and their lead gen campaigns. Fundamentally, they wanted it to integrate with their existing CRM. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second as well. It needed to fit in with their existing ecosystem. Above all else, they wanted it to be able to be easy to use, that they could manage themselves, because the team at Bruntwood, they don't have a big marketing team. Most people tend not to be honest, so you need something that's quick and simple and easy to use and helps us do the job we need it to do, okay? They wanted to build a competitive advantage because Bruntwood are a client that are landlords and they own retail spaces and office spaces. It's a very fiercely fought market and they needed to get in quickly and fill those spaces. Lastly, the money question. It was a small marketing budget. We needed a quick campaign just to get it running. We're not going to spend thousands and thousands on a website to get it up and running. We want something quick that services that retail space over there or that office location that we're launching over there. So why did we pick it over classic Umbraco, or why did we pick it over Harco or any of the other options that we could have used? We could see, actually, that this wasn't just going to be a one-off campaign. They've got lots of office installations and lots of retail installations. We could see there was a roadmap. So we could see they were going to need multiple sites. So why didn't we just build it in classic Umbraco and do it in multi-site? Well, I'll go back to the first bit about speed to market, okay? They also had a limited budget, so Cloud and Starter Kit offered us a really low cost of development, but also a really low cost of ownership, so tying in with those budgets. There's a library of ready-made components to work with that were easily styled, so we could work with them to make it look the way they wanted it to work without having to do an awful lot of work to do it. It's an easy, intuitive, flexible piece of software to use. So they don't need a degree in rocket science to be able to build a web page. There's no command line. Sorry, we don't need to deploy something, or as some of the demos you've seen just before. Ready-made accessible themes to start from, which is brilliant because we could hit the ground running. And the cool bit, maybe less so for the marketeers, but from a development company, we're looking and going, brilliant. It's got built-in Umbraco forms, because that's the bit that we knew we were going to need. So let's just talk a little bit about the integration capability. It's Umbraco, right? So we've got lots of integrations already available. The marketplace is already there. So there's many of those extensions and things we can enable straight out of the box. You can even add e-commerce. You know, there's several different options. E-commerce being one of them, obviously, the best one. You can buy me a drink at the bar later, by the way. But yeah, so we've got e-commerce, we've got BigCommerce, we've got all of those tools that we've talked about that we've seen so far this afternoon. They can all be integrated with Cloud and Starter Kit, okay? But then there's wider integrations through tools like Zapier, so we can pull in things from different sources and work with different ways. But let's get back on topic. What did we need this for Bruntwood? Well, Bruntwood needed to take the data out of Umbraco and feed it into Salesforce, into Pardo. Hang on a minute, there isn't a module for Pardo. How do we get the data out of Umbraco and into Pardo? Well, dead simple, because it's built on Umbraco forms. So we've got the ability to create a form using a simple workflow that we set up an API endpoint with Salesforce Pardo, which was the team that worked at Bruntwood, who managed their own Salesforce implementation. So the marketing team can just get the CRM team to spin up that CRM, that API endpoint, and then build the form themselves. We built the first one for them and then showed them how to do it. But their own team creates the API endpoint, and then they create their own form with a workflow that says, these are the fields that we want, this is the information we want to capture, and that's where I want you to send it to. And then the new business team can then, the marketing team, pick that up, qualify the lead, put it through to the biz dev team, and away you go. We're not needed. We're trying to make ourselves redundant at this point. But that's cool because we can spend more time with our client doing other things and add value in different ways, okay? But one of the most powerful features is the speed of being able to spin up that campaign. So we can spin up a campaign, create a form, hook it up to an API endpoint, and do the whole thing in under an hour. You can do it fast enough whereby your coffee hasn't cooled. You probably haven't had time to drink it. But all with easy-to-use components, so we can pull in all that rich media, pull in those complex form fields, all those workflows to route the data to various different places. But you can do it all yourself without that degree in rocket science. So what do the results look like? Because we're all commercial, right? And everything's based on results. There's based on a standard Umbraco build, there was well over a 200% reduction in delivery time from the client, from design sign-off to the client, okay? We worked with their internal creative team. We didn't actually do the creative ourselves. We worked with them. But sites were delivered in a few weeks, and the build time is actually measured in days. The few weeks bit is by the time it goes through the process of getting internal sign-off and then putting some content in and testing it and all the rest of it, okay? Much lower cost to produce, which saved the budget of the marketing team. Now, you could argue that meant that they spent less money with us. Well, no, because it just meant that there was left for more money in the marketing budget to do other things in. And we all know we want more money in the marketing budget to do other things with. Okay? Massive time saving in developer resource, which is good because we have a small team that do that bit, and then we can move on to the next one. Much lower cost to produce, as I say. But the key thing is, it's built on Umbraco Cloud. So high performance, even when, in this case, when embedding complex 3D models and renderings of the installations. And more importantly, it was an easily replicable, that's a really hard word to say, I should have changed that one, platform for future campaigns, okay? But what did this give Bruntwood? So we can talk about from a development perspective how awesome it was and how it made our lives easier. But for Bruntwood, it gave them the ability to launch campaign sites much, much quicker. So they're launching their space against some of their competitors. They got their marketing campaigns out quicker. They generated leads quicker, because that's what this is all about, okay? They had an intuitive, consistent, easy-to-use platform, and we'll look at the consistency in a minute. They had ready-made tools and widgets to use to roll this stuff out with. And above all else, they had self-managed campaign forms that they could integrate with their back-office systems. They didn't need us. Now, we can move fast, okay? But with the greatest will in the world, we can never move as fast as you guys in your own marketing team. So with this, you now have the tools to be able to do this yourself in a much, much quicker way. So some key stats. Average bid time was 4 days. We had a couple that were done in less than that. Very, very low cost of entry. You know, you can see on the Umbraco website that the cost of running Umbraco Cloud Starter Kit is freely published. It's not expensive at all. They generated over 100 leads in the first month. Now, by some people's standards, 100 leads, is that a big figure? Is that a small figure? But when you're talking about renting out office space that might cost hundreds of thousands of pounds per year, actually, having all those leads where you can then convert those through into proper conversations, you do the maths and the simple conversion rate, and actually that generates them an awful lot of money. You got over 500 leads in the first quarter. So, that was because they could benefit from that rapid rollout, that low cost of ownership, and rerouting those funds towards more money in their marketing budget to advertise it to generate those leads. Simple as that. So let's quickly touch on the design, because I talked about consistency, but then do they all look the same? Is this like a cookie cutter where I'm just going to get one site and change a logo at the top and that's it? No. So this is 4 of the sites that we did. Okay, it's actually a much larger portfolio, but I've just picked 4 at random, okay? You can see there are some consistencies across some of those design layouts, because we like consistency for a start, but also some of them are part of a suite of installations, so you needed to move between the 2, and that consistency was key. Others, like the EVO one, it looks a lot different, but you can see they've got different page components, different functionality. You know, the Stamford Quarter one is focused on a retail space and a town and urban regeneration. EVO is more about creating a carbon-neutral office space. Do they all look the same? No, they don't. They use different widgets, different features, but they're all built under the same underlying platform. We work with their in-house team to design around it, and then away we went. We can also embed things within it, so it's not limited to just creating content within the platform. We've got a series of complex 3D rendered models and walkthroughs and 360s, pulling in rich media from external sources. So let's talk about some lessons. Now, we learned some lessons along the way as well, and they learned some lessons along the way. So one of the things that we needed to enforce is the wrong word, but certainly guide in the beginning is, when working with third-party designers, make sure that the design guidelines are followed. Because with the greatest will in the world, okay, and as the developers in the room will definitely echo this, you give a designer something to design around, and they will come up with something completely different that's impossible to implement, because that's what designers do, right? So working with them to help them shape, these are the widgets, you know, the core widgets, design around that, these are the things you can do, we were able to get through that really quickly. From your perspective, think about what you need to do with your data. Where is it going to go? In the case of Bruntwood, it was going into Pardo, but there were certain workflows and routes it was going to go through first. But think about what it's going to end up. Look for modules where possible. So if your company uses HubSpot, for example, brilliant, because you can enable the HubSpot module and away you go. Okay, but obviously all is not lost if there isn't one. We've got the submit to URL feature and be able to get it in that way. But take the time to think about what data you need to collect and where it's going to go, because it makes it easier when you're building your form. Take the time to understand the widgets better. The reason why I say that is because quite a number of the designs, of some of the areas in those designs I showed you earlier on, were actually using the same widget, but because of the way they were created and styled, and the different types of content that were placed in them, they don't actually look like they're using the same widget, but really you are. So again, you're keeping it really, really easy. The other thing is, keep it simple. Now, obviously, that's a mantra for many things, but actually, once you've got all these widgets and you can customize them in all those ways, there is a tendency sometimes to go, well, I can do all of these things, so I'm going to go mad. Actually, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate your page, because yes, you've got lots of tools there to use, but work out what it is the page needs to do and make sure it meets that rather than going overboard. But lastly, the replication of those sites, from our perspective, is now much, much easier with the use of Umbraco baselines. So now we've spun this up, we've created a framework for those campaign sites, and we can replicate that much quicker using that feature, which from a customer's perspective means that it takes even less time to do it. I've got a customized starter point for your organization, and you evolve it from there. We also got a lovely quote from our client, which is always good, okay? But, you know, this is the guy that runs the marketing team that has to generate all those campaigns and service those different parts of the business. And they immediately saw the benefit in what we were trying to do, take advantage of that low cost of ownership, but that real rapid route to market. And they can see that we're rolling them out further, but it's much easier for them to manage within their team. And there is a consistency in how it's done, which makes it easier. So where next? Okay. Well, actually, what's beyond, in particular, what's beyond Starter Kit? Well, actually, it's built on Umbraco Cloud. So it's a solid entry into the Umbraco product family, which we all know and love. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Or maybe we would, I don't know, maybe. But the key thing is it's built using that same Umbraco technology. So it follows those composable principles that we've all been talking about today. So you're not missing out by going down that route. But there's a clear transition path to classic Umbraco or Umbraco through Umbraco Cloud, all without leaving that ecosystem. So if you start off with a smaller campaign site, for example, it can evolve and grow into a much larger site without you having to go anywhere, which is a really, really powerful feature because we don't have to rebuild it or re-platform it, which is great for the marketing team. Again, sucks for the developers. Sorry. So it grows with you, okay? And then lastly, you've got that wide access to the wider ecosystem of Umbraco and all those modules and all those integrations that we've been talking about. So I was going to ask questions at the end of this, but obviously we have the Q&A bit afterwards, so we can always, if anybody wants to ask a specific question now, because I think we've got a little bit of time. We've got about 2 minutes, I think. So if anyone wants to ask a specific question now, please feel free to do so, or we can just move through into the Q&A a little bit earlier, if you like. Cool. I think we'll move on to the Q&A a little bit earlier. So thank you. I'm Steve. My details are there. Please get in touch.
Yes, thank you, Steve. In 5 minutes, we'll have the Q&A sessions hosted by Purnima. So please stay around if you have any questions or would like to also hear the answers, of course. Thanks again, Steve.